It was the 4th of December, 1965. Winter had settled upon Murcia, a city of ancient stone and narrow streets in the southeastern reaches of Spain. The air carried the scent of coal smoke from 1,000 hearths, mingled with the damp of approaching rain. In the neighborhood of Del Carmen, where new apartment buildings rose to house the workers streaming in from the countryside, the Martinez del Águila family occupied the first dwelling in the Casas del Carmen complex. These were modest accommodations, constructed as part of the social housing schemes that marked Spain's industrial transformation under the regime of General Francisco Franco. The morning passed quietly. Children played in the street. Women hung washing. Men departed for the building sites and factories that promised better wages than the exhausted fields. Within the Martinez del Águila residence, 9-month-old Mari Carmen lay upon her bed. Her breathing had grown labored. Fits seized her small body. By evening, the child was dead. The doctor who attended recorded the cause as meningitis. Such illnesses were not uncommon in crowded dwellings where many shared confined spaces. Yet, within 1 month, 3 more children of that household would follow Mari Carmen to the Nuestro Padre Jesus cemetery in Espinardo. And death would come not from disease, but from poison administered by a child's hand. Piedad Martínez del Águila had been born in 1953, the third child and first daughter of Andrés Martínez del Águila and Antonia Pérez Díaz. Her father worked as a bricklayer in the construction trades, laboring upon the very buildings that housed the families of workmen like himself. Her mother took on odd work where she could find it, for wages were modest and the household expenses considerable. By the time Piedad had reached her 12th year, 9 younger siblings had followed her into the world. 2 elder brothers, Antonio aged 16 and Manuel aged 14, had already departed the schoolroom for employment. Antonio had apprenticed as a bricklayer following his father's trade. Manuel had found a position in metalworking. The family had originally dwelt in a rough shelter in Algeciras, but 2 years prior they had removed to the apartment in Del Carmen, where the walls were solid and the roof did not leak. The younger children numbered 7. Jesus was 10 years of age, Cristina 8, Manuela 6, Andres 5, Fuensanta 4, Mariano 2, and Mari Carmen, but 9 months. Antonia, the mother, was 7 months into yet another pregnancy. The apartment that had seemed spacious when first occupied had grown cramped with the addition of each new infant. Piedad did not attend school. Her days were consumed with the maintenance of the household and the supervision of her younger siblings. She washed their clothes, prepared their meals, changed and dressed them, kept the rooms in order. The little ones were her constant charges when her mother worked and her father labored upon the building sites. It was said that she harbored ambitions of becoming a hairdresser in her adult years, though such dreams seemed distant prospects. The family's circumstances were not unusual for their time and station. Throughout Spain, in the mid-years of the 1960s, families of the working classes lived in similar arrangements. Children assumed responsibilities from tender ages. Privacy was scarce. Resources were stretched thin across many mouths. The dictatorship under Franco provided for social housing and industrial expansion, yet individual families bore the burden of survival within systems not designed for their comfort. Little is recorded of Piedad's temperament before the events that would mark the winter of 65 and 66. She is said to have been an ordinary girl, neither remarkable for virtue nor notable for difficulty. She tended her siblings. She worked briefly, polishing motorcycle parts, to contribute a few coins to the household funds. By all appearances, she was simply one more child, pressed early into adult burdens. The months preceding December had been unremarkable. The household continued in its established patterns. Father and elder brothers departed before dawn. Mother attended to such employment as came her way. Piedad remained with the younger children, an arrangement that had persisted for years without incident. Yet burdens accumulate imperceptibly until they become unendurable. A child of 12, responsible for the feeding, clothing, and supervision of 7 younger siblings, whilst also maintaining a household and contributing through industrial work, might be forgiven for experiencing the weight of such obligations. Friends played in the streets, while she tended infants. Freedom existed only in imagination. It was in such circumstances, reportedly, that frustration took root. The exact progression of thought and intention remains uncertain, for the inner workings of a child's mind under such strain resist simple explanation. What is documented is the outcome, not the descent toward it. The Martinez del Águila apartment contained items common to households of that era and station: cleaning materials for maintaining surfaces, tablets used for polishing metal parts, the very items upon which Piedad performed her paid work, substances employed for controlling the vermin that infested even the newest buildings where many families resided in proximity. These materials, unremarkable in themselves, possessed properties that rendered them dangerous if consumed. The child Mari Carmen fell ill on the 4th of December. Seizures overtook her. The family physician diagnosed meningitis, an illness that had claimed another infant of the household 5 years earlier. Death followed swiftly. The family mourned. The small body was conveyed to the cemetery. Life continued. 5 days passed. On the 9th of December, 2-year-old Mariano exhibited similar symptoms: fits, fever, marks upon the skin. Within hours, the child was dead. Again, the diagnosis was meningitis. 2 deaths in 5 days, both children of tender age, both apparently from the same illness. Concern began to stir among neighbors, though infectious disease was understood to spread within close quarters. 5 more days elapsed. On the 14th of December, 4-year-old Fuensanta fell ill. The same terrible progression, the same outcome: 3 children dead within 10 days. The pattern had become unmistakable. The family physician, Dr. Antonio Guillamon, refused to sign a death certificate. He notified the court and the health authorities of these unusual deaths. Fear spread through the neighborhood. Perhaps some contagion had taken hold in the Martinez del Águila dwelling. Perhaps the family carried an infection that threatened the entire community. The authorities acted swiftly, ordering the family removed to the provincial hospital of Murcia for observation and examination. The entire family was admitted to the provincial hospital of Murcia in mid-December. Physicians conducted examinations. Tests were performed. Food intolerances were considered. Yet no abnormalities were discovered. The surviving children appeared in good health. The parents showed no signs of illness. By Christmas, the medical staff concluded that no infectious disease threatened the family, and they were permitted to return to their residence. The respite lasted scarcely 10 days. On the 4th of January, 1966, at 9 o'clock in the morning, 5-year-old Andres became ill. The now familiar symptoms manifested: rash spreading across the skin, dark marks like bruises, purple spots, fever, convulsions. The child died within the hour. 4 children dead in 31 days. All had been in apparent good health before their sudden afflictions. All had exhibited identical symptoms. All had died with remarkable swiftness. The deaths followed a pattern most disturbing. They occurred in ascending order of age, beginning with the youngest and progressing upward through the siblings. The authorities ordered immediate action. The internal organs of young Andres and of Fuensanta were removed and dispatched to the Carlos III Health Institute in Madrid for comprehensive examination. No virus was detected. The specimens were then forwarded to the Institute of Toxicology. On the 11th of January, the toxicology report revealed the cause of death: poison. Without question, without doubt, poison had been present in the bodies. Orders were issued for the exhumation of all 4 deceased children from the Nuestro Padre Jesus Cemetery in Espinardo. The examinations confirmed what the toxicologists had discovered. Traces of DDT and potassium cyanide were found in each small corpse. The children had not died from disease. They had been deliberately poisoned. The revelation sent tremors through the community and beyond. Who had administered such lethal substances to helpless infants? The parents, Andres and Antonia, were immediately arrested and placed under custody. Antonia, in an advanced state of pregnancy, was held in the San Juan de Dios hospital under guard. Andres was remanded to the El Palmar Psychiatric Center, where his mental state could be evaluated. Both parents protested their innocence. They insisted that no poisonous substances existed within their household. They suggested that enemies or outsiders must have somehow gained access to their children. Antonia expressed particular sympathy for her daughter Piedad, noting that the girl had been the last person to see each sibling before death claimed them. She added that Piedad, being but 12 years of age, could not possibly comprehend the full gravity of what had occurred. The examinations conducted at the University of Murcia provided further disturbing revelations. Scientists performed experiments using 21 guinea pigs and several dogs to determine the lethal dosage of the poison combination discovered in the victims. The purpose was to establish whether the children might have accidentally ingested the substances or whether the poisoning had been deliberate. The findings were unequivocal. The amounts present in the bodies of the deceased children could only have been administered intentionally. The mixture of DDT and potassium cyanide, combined with other cleaning agents, was sufficient to cause death within 30 minutes of consumption. The concoction had been carefully prepared, formed into small balls or tablets, and introduced into beverages or food. The medical experts determined the sequence of death with precision. Each child had consumed the poison. Within a brief period, symptoms manifested: skin eruptions, discoloration, seizures. Consciousness was lost. Death followed swiftly. The youngest children, possessing the smallest bodies, had succumbed most rapidly. The pattern suggested not accident, but design. As the investigation broadened, attention turned increasingly toward Piedad. She had been present when each child fell ill. She had been responsible for feeding the younger siblings. She had been observed to maintain an unsettling composure throughout the ordeal. While other family members wept and grieved, she appeared detached, almost serene. Journalists from the Madrid-based publication El Caso descended upon Murcia. This weekly magazine, devoted to sensational crimes and unusual occurrences, sent reporters to interview the surviving children. The case had captured public fascination across Spain. A journalist noted with particular interest that Piedad exhibited none of the fear or distress one might expect from a child whose siblings had died mysteriously around her. If you are finding this case as compelling as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us continue researching and sharing these forgotten stories from history. We also read every comment, so let us know your thoughts on this case below. Now, let us continue. A police inspector devised a method to determine Piedad's involvement. He invited her to accompany him to a public house, where in seemingly playful manner, he pretended to drop a capsule of chloride into her glass of milk. Piedad's reaction was immediate. First amusement, then alarm. She protested that he might harm someone with such actions. When he pressed the glass upon her and insisted she drink, she refused with increasing hostility. Finally, he asked directly whether this resembled what she had given to her siblings. Piedad's expression changed instantly. Her confession followed without delay. Under questioning, Piedad admitted her culpability. She stated clearly that she had been responsible for the deaths of all 4 children. Her account, however, varied in its particulars. Initially, she claimed that the first 3 killings had been carried out upon her mother's orders, whilst the 4th, young Andres, she had poisoned of her own initiative. When pressed for details, she explained her method with disconcerting precision. She had taken tablets used for cleaning metal, likely those employed in her work polishing motorcycle parts. These she had combined with rat poison, substances readily available in the household and throughout the neighborhood. The mixture was formed into small balls or pellets. These were then dropped into glasses of milk which she served to her younger siblings. The children consumed the poison unknowingly. Death came within half an hour in each instance. Under further interrogation, Piedad provided different versions of events. At times, She maintained that her mother had commanded the killings. At others, she admitted sole responsibility. She explained her motivation with disturbing simplicity. She had grown weary of caring for so many younger siblings. They consumed her days entirely. She possessed no time for herself, no opportunity to play with friends as other children did. By eliminating the youngest, most demanding children, she hoped to gain freedom. Only one of the victims had spoken before death. 4-year-old Fuensanta had managed words as the poison took effect. She had called out, "Piedad, come quickly. I am dying." Piedad recounted this detail without apparent emotion. Following her confession, Piedad was admitted to a psychiatric hospital where doctors conducted thorough evaluations. Their conclusion was unanimous and stark. They determined that she was a psychopath who had acted with premeditated malice. She understood the difference between right and wrong. She comprehended fully what she had done, yet she exhibited no remorse whatsoever for her actions. The legal proceedings faced an insurmountable obstacle. Piedad, at 12 years of age, could not be formally charged with crimes under Spanish law. She was below the age of criminal responsibility. No trial could be convened. No verdict could be rendered. Instead, after a brief period at the juvenile court, arrangements were made for her placement. She was sent to reside at the Convento de Oblatas in Murcia, a Catholic institution operated by the Oblate sisters for the housing and reformation of wayward girls and at-risk juveniles. Her parents were released from custody, cleared of all suspicion. The case became known throughout Spain as El Caso de los Niños Murcianos, the case of the Murcian children. The magazine El Caso devoted extensive coverage to the matter, selling hundreds of thousands of copies. Prior to the discovery of the poisoning, unfounded rumors had circulated that the children died from suffocation, pillows pressed upon their faces. Once the truth emerged, public fascination intensified. The journalist who interviewed Piedad at the hospital wrote words that would be widely quoted. "We could find ourselves before a girl of extraordinary cynicism or astonishing tranquility. She is strange, ironic, and sly." He expressed belief that Piedad was the sole author of the 4 deaths, acting without maternal direction despite her claims to the contrary. Within the Convento de Oblatas, Piedad adapted to her circumstances with apparent ease. Staff members reported that she was polite and pleasant, happy to participate in games and activities. She learned the art of knitting and devoted many hours to this pursuit. She was often observed with a sewing box at her side, working quietly at her needlework. She expressed desires to live with an aunt named Lola, who had no children of her own and might provide a proper home. The Martinez del Águila family suffered consequences extending far beyond the loss of their children. They were shunned by their community. Neighbors refused to associate with them. Employment became difficult to secure. The stigma of the poisonings clung to them like an unshakable shadow. Andrés Martinez del Águila, the father, managed eventually to find work as a refuse collector, a position of low status and modest pay. In his later years, he lost his sight entirely, becoming blind. He lived in poverty until his death some years afterward. Antonia, the mother, bore her 11th child, but never recovered from the devastation that had befallen her household. The 2 eldest sons, Antonio and Manuel, pursued paths that brought further infamy to the family name. Both became known to the authorities for criminal activities. They attempted briefly to establish themselves as a singing duo, touring Spain, but this venture proved short-lived. Antonio later tried his hand at bullfighting, seeking fame through that traditional Spanish pursuit. Antonio was subsequently convicted of murdering a taxi driver and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 1978, he participated with 15 other inmates in a daring prison escape, tunneling to freedom, though he was recaptured shortly thereafter. Of Piedad herself, little is known following her time at the convent. Some accounts suggest she remained within religious life, perhaps becoming a nun, Others indicate she returned to society under an assumed identity, attempting to conceal her past. No official records trace her whereabouts after her release. The truth of her later years remains unknown. The case raised profound questions about childhood, responsibility, and the psychological capacity for evil in one so young. How does a child of 12 conceive of and execute such calculated acts? What transforms a girl into a poisoner of her own siblings? These questions remain unanswered. In the records of Spanish criminal history, the file remains, documenting a winter when death came to Carol de la Farola, not through disease or accident, but through deliberate human action, administered by hands that should have protected rather than destroyed.